We have 4 recommendations that we want to provide to the district. The first is improving perimeter control, get that second barrier so we're not vulnerable to human attack as much. The second is we want to improve our supplies. And the most notable in the supply recommendation is we would like to have stop the bleed training and stop the bleed supplies at each one of the schools. We know that saves lives, and we can demonstrate that through research. The third recommendation is we want to increase our perimeter surveillance. Most of the school sites in the Saddleback Valley Unified School District don't have what they call natural surveillance from the office. In other words, I can't see a bad guy walking up to the office in some cases until he opens the door.
Yep.
What we want to do is improve that situation by utilizing existing CCTVs so that we can see threatening behavior from a ways off. That would give us time to alert the rest of the school site to go into lockdown procedures. And then the final recommendation is training. We want to recommend to the district that the training that takes place in regards to emergency response be in person and be hands-on. We want staff and faculty at the school sites to know what it's like to put on a tourniquet, not the first time in a real event, but during training. We want the staff and faculty at the school site to understand what it's like to use the PA system to announce a lockdown from their classroom during practice, not during a real event when they're likely to forget the procedures. And so we think with increased training that's reality-based and that's hands-on and in-person, we will have a better response capability. And with that,
Hold on, I have to go back to that last slide for just 1 second. I just want to finalize on the recommendations that were made there. That we're currently finalizing budget amounts for these projects, and next month we'll be presenting those as part of the first interim budget, and we do present that at the December meeting. And additionally, toward the end there of, as we look at the improved perimeter surveillance, toward that end, we're completing currently a $100,000 grant opportunity with Orange County Supervisor District 5 Lisa Bartlett's office to launch our efforts in that. So we'll have more information about that in December, as well as that should provide some initial funding for us to start that. And so then now we can take questions.
So I'd like to start with Caitlin. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any specific questions, but I just would like to commend the attention towards active shooter violence, because that's definitely a fear that we as students carry every single day. So thank you for that.
And then I'm going to turn to our other students and ask if any of you have any questions. It's okay if you don't, but I just want to give you an opportunity. Okay. All right. Trustee Swartz?
You answered most of my questions. I'm glad that we'll get a budget idea, and there's a report coming that'll be.
yes, there is a document that will be produced. I think the target date is December 15th.
Okay.
And then you would go through detail. It will also summarize the findings from each school site visit, so you have information for school site.
Oh, that's great. Okay, because getting a handle on the kind of amount of money we're going to need to do what we need to do. I also just want to say your comment about the relationships, and you spend a lot of time at each school, I understand, and you actually talk to students and staff and
We did.
parents if they happen to be there at the time.
We did. We interviewed the principal. We went into classrooms, we talked to students, we talked to teachers. I've been dealing with schools for quite a few years, over 20 years. And so we really spent some time in trying to come up with the questions. So as an example, we'll go into a classroom and we'll ask the students, so what's the emergency procedure? And that tells me, okay, they know the procedure, but it also tells me that the teacher spent time telling the student that. So there's communication there. Or we'll ask the administrator, when's the last time you did a drill? How did you do the drill? Well, it comes from the office. Well, that tells me, okay, it's not realistic. It needs to come from outside on the campus. Or we'll ask, what happens if you have a lockdown at lunchtime? Where do you go specifically? Is that door open? Do you have the key for that door? So we're asked very pointed questions so that we can understand the capability of that particular school site. And details will be in the December 15th.
And that's really wonderful, and I'm glad to hear that your perception overall was that
Very positive.
it is positive and that people are working hard to build those relationships. And we already know through our text to tip, that students have felt very comfortable if they had a concern, that we are getting the information. I mean, even it turns out their concern was for naught, it gives us the opportunity to look into it and everything. So I'm glad there's that comfort level, because it gives us a good foundation, I think, to build upon as we move forward with that. I'm looking forward to the report and seeing the budget next month. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Trustee Gooden?
Yes, thank you very much, Henry, for this report. We appreciate it. And it sounds to me like, and correct me if I'm wrong, in your work with the schools thus far, you've also encouraged and confirmed the concept of if someone sees something unusual, they say something. And I think that's really part of some good communication as well. And as Trustee Swartz said, even if it's quote unquote a false alarm, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you for that. And yes, I too look forward to your report
Thank you.
next month.
Dr. Long, you have?
Yeah, one quick question.
Sure.
On page 4, and a lot of your discussions tonight have been that you've gone to every school site.
Yes, sir.
We're sitting at a district office on a corner. We got a couple hundred employees here. We could be doing staff development with another possibility of maybe 100 teachers here. Have you looked at this site as well, and is that going to be included in your report?
It will, and I have.
Great, thank you. You just didn't mention it, so that's why I asked.
Yeah. It was the last school site we did.
I found it interesting that teachers could call in from their classroom. I found that interesting. So if nothing else, you gave us another good piece of information. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think the level of analysis and recommendations, even just to the practicality of, practicing how it may exhibit in real life, with, your comment about this might not occur at the office commonly, it might be from a classroom, that we need to practice those drills, right? One question related to the resilience analysis and planning tool that you use. So you've gathered real on-site data, questions through our students and staff and so on. When you plug things into the analysis and planning tool, where's that data source coming from, and what's the basis of that tool and data?
The tool itself is a tool that FEMA provides. FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And the tool looks at a number of things. We looked at 2 elements. One was the Social Vulnerability Index, and that's really from research that comes out of, I believe, North Carolina. And what they look at is, if I recall, 32 different factors. So there are things like, do you have home insurance? Do you have health insurance? Do you, how stable is your job? How vulnerable are you to a disruption in your life? Can you bounce back or can you not? Then the second one that we looked at was the resilience score and the community resilience score, CRS, and that looks at community issues, okay? What's the budget like and stability of that budget for the city? We have 5 cities in this school district. How strong is the state's budget? How strong is the emergency response program for the area, the region, or the state? And so it adds all that together to say, okay, this area could withstand a disaster if it happened. Now, they're looking at primary impacts. Let me add a little bit more to this answer. It doesn't necessarily look at what we're calling cascading impacts, meaning that an earthquake happens, our buildings stay up at the school district, but it may mean that the city has a number of apartment buildings that go down, because they're not made the same way a school is. Or it may mean that surrounding communities have devastating losses, and those people now migrate into our area, and we are dealing with those kinds of impacts. So it looks at primarily direct impact, not cascading. And one of the reasons we selected earthquakes and wildfires is they tend to have very big cascading impacts that take a while for us to respond to as a community.
So access to our sites might be another example of a cascading impact.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you I come from public safety, and I'm old enough to remember Northridge. And people lived on school sites for a very long period of time. If you think about it just as a human being, if you get awakened at 4:31 in the morning, as Northridge did, with a really big earthquake, you're not trying to go back into your house real quick, and you're worried about aftershocks. Now, living on a campus, camping outdoors, we thought, well, people camp there for a few days and go away. But what we didn't realize is that there's a lot of other issues that go along with that. People don't have access to bathrooms, for example, and that becomes a hazmat cleanup for the school district to clean. Okay, so that's just one example that was wildly expensive during Northridge. We think that problem will be the case in a future earthquake.